Que me falte, everyone. 100,000 welcomes. Welcome, welcome. My name is The Lucky Coyote, and today we are going to be reading some Irish folk and fairy tale stories. And maybe a little bit later on, I might play some original music for you. Thanks for checking in, Suzu. So, let us get to it. I'm going to turn down the sound just a little bit. Hopefully it's not too loud. All right. This first story is entitled How Conla Was Called Away. All right. You'll also forgive me if I occasionally slip into a little bit of an Irish brogue. But here we go. Con of the 100 Battles had a son, Conla Redhair, and one day when the lad was out hunting with his father in the mountains of Usna, he saw a woman whose dress was a wonder. "Where did you come from?" Conla asked her. "From the land of the ever-living," she answered, "where there is neither death nor sorrow, and where we are forever feasting, with no need of servants for our feasts. Our life is play without quarrel, because our homes are under the round green hills. We are called the people of the hills." "Who's that talking?" shouted Con, as he drew his blade, for although he heard her voice, no one but Conla could see the fairy woman standing there. Then the woman answered Con, "Your son is speaking to a maiden who is beautiful and of noble race. It is I who will never grow old nor die, and because Conla Redhair is my own true love, I am calling him away now, to the land of delight, where Brodig is king forever over a country without weeping or woe. Come away, Conla Redhair, bright-eyed and fair of face. Come away to the place where a golden crown is waiting, where your youth and beauty will never fade till the day of doom." When all the company had heard this speech from the woman whom none could see, Con cried to his druid, "Help me, O wise man, songmaker, spellcaster, for here is a power beyond my understanding, and strength greater than my own. A woman, invisible as air, is stealing away my darling, my royal son." Then the druid began to chant a charm against the voice of the woman, until she was silent, and even Conla Red could no longer see her. But as she vanished before the might of the druid's song, she threw an apple to Conla. For the length of a month and a day, Conla went without food or drink except for his apple. However much he ate of it, the apple was whole all the while, and all the while a terrible yearning was upon him for the fairy woman he alone had seen. The last day of the month, Conla was with his father, the king, on the plain of Akraman, where he saw the same woman coming to him again and calling him by name. "Conla, who sits on a high throne here, among dying people, with nothing but death before you, ye who have watched you day by day in your home and among your dear ones, we, the ever-living, bid you away with us now to the land of delight." When Con heard that voice, he gave orders to his company. Bring me the druid here quickly, for the fairy woman has power of speech on her again. But then he heard the woman say, Con of the 100 battles, it is small love or honour the druid's power has among the fair people. For the time is coming when all their black magic will be scattered like darkness in the dawn. Con knew, none better, that his Conla Redhair had spoken to not a soul but that woman since he first heard her voice. Now he turned to his son and asked him, Is it that her words have touched your heart, Conla? It goes hard with me, father, the boy answered him, for I love my home and my people above all things, and yet, I feel a great longing in me because of this woman. Then the woman spoke again, and her speech was like singing. That longing is like the waves of the sea, Conla Redhair, and you struggle against it even as it carries you off and away. Sail with me now in my swift crystal ship to Brodrigg's kingdom beneath the fairy hill. And there is yet another country beyond that, where we could be by fall of night. Though the bright sun is setting here, it is an island to delight the heart, where women and girls live only. When the woman had finished her song, Conla suddenly rushed away from his companions and leapt into her crystal ship. The king and all could only stand and watch as he rowed away across the bright sea toward the setting sun until he was lost to their sight. And Conla Redhair was never seen again by mortal man from that time to this. Thus ends how Conla was called away. Now, Con of the 100 Battles was a mortal man, an historical figure, if you like. He was of the race we call Celtic, and the language he spoke was Gaelic. But the woman who calls his son Conla away was of an older race, it seems. She was a fairy of the people the Celts called the Sidhe. But she is only our word for them. They called themselves the Tuatha De Danann, and they themselves were not native to Ireland, but came in great ships and conquered a race called Fir Blogs. And before that, it's, as they say, a long story, and probably best told by the only person who was an eyewitness to it all, Tuan Macairill. This version of Tuan's tale was written by the great Irish poet and novelist James Stephens. This is the story of Tuan Macairill. Chapter 1. Finian, the abbot of Moville, went southwards and eastwards in great haste. News had come to him in Donegal that there were yet people in his own province who believed in gods that he did not approve of, and the gods that we do not approve of are treated scurvily, even by saintly men. He was told of a powerful gentleman who observed neither Saint's Day nor Sunday. A powerful first person, said the Fenian. All that, was the reply. We shall try this person's power, said the Fenian. He is reputed to be wise and hearty man, said his informant. We shall test his wisdom and his hardihood. He is, that gossip whispered. He is a magician. I will magician him, cried Finian angrily. Where does that man live? He was informed, and he proceeded to that direction without delay. In no great time he came to the stronghold of the gentleman who followed ancient ways, and he demanded admittance in order that he might preach and prove the new God, and exorcise and terrify and banish even the memory of the old one. For to a God grown old, time is as ruthless as to a beggarman grown old. But the Ulster gentleman refused Finian admittance. He barricaded his house, he shuttered his windows, and in a gloom of indignation and protest, he continued the practices of 10,000 years, and would not hearken to Finian calling at the window, or to time knocking at his door. But of these adversaries, it was the first he redoubted. Finian loomed on him as a portent and a terror, but he had no fear of time. Indeed, he was the foster brother of time, and so disdainful of the bitter God that he did not even disdain him. He leaped over the scythe, he dodged under it, and the sole occasions on which time laughs is when he chances on Tuan, the son of Caril, the son of Muad'Rak Redneck. Chapter 2. Now Finian could not abide that any person should resist both the gospel and himself, and he proceeded to force the stronghold by peaceful but powerful methods. He fasted on the gentleman, and he did so to such purpose that he was admitted to the house. For to an hospitable heart, the idea that a stranger may expire on your doorstep from sheer famine cannot be tolerated. The gentleman, however, did not give in without a struggle. He thought that when Finian had grown sufficiently hungry, he would lift the siege and take himself off to some place where he might get food. But he did not know that Finian, the great abbot, sat down on a spot just beyond the door, and composed himself to all that might follow him from his action. He bent his gaze on the ground between his feet, and entered into a meditation from which he would only be released by admission or death. The first day passed quietly. Often the gentleman would send a servitor to spy if that deserter of the gods was still before his door, and each time the servant replied that he was still there. "He will be gone in the morning," said the hopeful master. On the morrow the state of the siege continued, and though that day the servants were sent many times to observe through spy holes, "Go," he would say, "and find out if the worshipper of new gods has taken himself away." But the servants returned each time with the same information. "The new druid is still there," they said. And through that day no one could leave the stronghold, and the enforced seclusion wrought on the minds of the servants, while the cessation of all work banded them together in small groups that whispered and discussed and disputed. Then these groups would disperse to peep through the spy hole at the patient, immobile figure that seated before the door, wrapped in a meditation that was timeless and unconcerned. They took fright at the spectacle, and once or twice a woman screamed hysterically and was bundled away with a companion's hand clapped on her mouth so that the ear of their master should not be affronted. "He has his own troubles," they said. "It is a combat of the gods that is taking place." So much for the women, but the men were also uneasy. They prowled up and down, tramping from the spy hole to the kitchen, and from the kitchen to the turreted roof, and from the roof they would look down on the motionless figure below, and speculate on many things, including the staunchness of man, the qualities of their master, and even the possibility that the new gods might be as powerful as the old. From these peepings and discussions they would return languid and discouraged. "If," said one irritable guard, "if we buzzed a spear at the persistent stranger, or if one slung at him with a jagged pebble." "What?" his master demanded wrathfully. "Is a spear to be thrown at an unarmed stranger, and from this house?" And he soundly cuffed that indelicate servant. "Be at peace, all of you," he said, "for hunger has a whip, and he will drive the stranger away in the night." The household retired in wretched beds, but for the master of the house there was no sleep. He marched his halls all night, going often to the spy-hole to see if that shadow was still in the shade, and pacing thence, tormented, preoccupied, refusing even the nose of his favorite dog as it pressed lovingly into the closed palm. On the morrow he gave in. The great door was swung wide, and two of his servants carried Finian into the house, for the saint could no longer walk or stand upright by reason of the hunger and exposure to which he had submitted. But his frame was tough as the unconquerable spirit that dwelt within it, and in no long time he was ready for whatever might come of dispute or anathema. Being quite re-established, he undertook the conversation of the master of the house, and the siege he laid upon against that notable intelligence was long spoken of among those who are interested in such things. He had beaten the disease of Moagin. He had beaten his own pupil at the great Columcille. He beat Tuan also, and just as the latter's door had opened to the persistent stranger, so his heart opened, and Finian marched there to do the will of God and his own will. One day they were talking together about the majesty of God and his love. For although Tuan had now received much instruction on this subject, he needed yet more, and he laid as close a siege on Finian as Finian had before that laid on him. But man works outwardly and inwardly. After rest he has energy. After energy he needs repose. So when we have given instruction for a time, we need instruction, and must receive it, or the spirit faints, and wisdom herself grows bitter. Therefore Finian said, "Tell me now about yourself, dear heart." But Tuan was avid of information about the true God. No, he said, "the past has nothing more of interest for me, and I do not wish anything to come between my soul and its instruction. Continue to teach me, dear friend and saintly father." "I will do that," Finian replied, "but I must first meditate deeply on you, and I must know you well. Tell me your past, my beloved, for a man is his past, and is to be known by it." But Tuan pleaded, "Let the past be content with itself, for man needs forgetfulness as well as memory." "My son," said Finian, "all that has ever been done has been done for the glory of God, and to confess our good and evil deeds is part of instruction. For the soul must recall its acts and abide by them, or renounce them by confession and penitence. Tell me your genealogy first, and by what descent you occupy these lands and stronghold, and then I will examine your acts and your conscience." Tuan replied obediently, "I am known as Tuan, son of Karil, son of Moardek Redneck, and these are the hereditary lands of my father." The saint nodded. "I am not as well acquainted with Ulster genealogies as I should be, yet I know something of them. I am by blood a Leinster man," he continued. Mine is a long pedigree, Tuan murmured. Finian received that information with respect and interest. I also, he said, have an honorable record. His host continued. I am indeed Tuan, the son of Strarn, the son of Sarah, who was brother to Partholon. But, said Finian in bewilderment, there is an error here, for you have recited 2 different genealogies. I do not understand this, Finian declared roundly. I am known as Tuan Macrehil, the other replied, but in the days of old I was known as Tuan Maxera, the brother of Partholon, the saint gasped. That is my pedigree, Tuan said. But, Finian objected in bewilderment, Partholon came to Ireland not long after the flood. I came with him, said Tuan mildly. The saint pushed his chair back hastily and sat staring at his host. And as he stared, the blood grew chill in his veins, and his hair crept along his scalp and stood on end. Chapter 4. But Finian was not one who remained long in bewilderment. He thought on the might of God, and he became that might, and was tranquil. He was one who loved God and Ireland, and to the person who could instruct him in these great themes, he gave all the interest of his mind and all the sympathy of his heart. It is a wonder you tell me, my beloved, he said, and now you must tell me more. What must I tell? Asked Tuan resignedly. Resignedly. It's an odd word. Tell me of the beginning of time in Ireland, and of the bearing of Partholon, the son of Noah's son. I have almost forgotten him, said Tuan. A greatly bearded, greatly shouldered man he was, a man of sweet deeds and sweet ways. Continue, my love, said Finian. He came to Ireland in a ship. 24 men and 24 women came with him. But before that time no man had come to Ireland, and in the western parts of the world no human being lived or moved. As we drew on Ireland from the sea, the country seemed like an unending forest, far as the eye could reach, and in whatever direction there were trees, and from these came the unceasing singing of birds. Over all that land the sun shone warm and beautiful, so that to our sea-weary eyes, our wind-tormented ears, it seemed as if we were driving on paradise. We landed, and we heard the rumble of water growing gloomily through the darkness of the forest. Following the water, we came to a glade where the sun shone and where the earth was warmed. And there Partholon rested with his 24 couples and made a city and a livelihood. There were fish in the rivers of Eire. There were animals in her coverts. Wild and shy and monstrous creatures ranged in her plains and forests. Creatures that one could see through and walk through. Long we lived and eased. And we saw the new animals grow, the bear, the wolf, the badger, the deer, and the boar. Partholon's people increased until from 24 couples there came 5,000 people, who lived in amity and contentment, although they had no wits. They had no wits, Finian commented. They had no need of wits, Tuan said. I have heard that the firstborn were mindless, said Finian. Continue your story, my beloved. Then, sudden as a rising wind, between one night and a morning, there came a sickness that bloated the stomach and purpled the skin. And on the 7th day all the race of Partholon were dead, save one man only. There always escapes one man, said Finian thoughtfully. And I am that man, his companion affirmed. Tuan shaded his brow with his hand, and he remembered backwards through incredible ages to the beginning of the world and the first days of Ere. And Finian, with his blood again running chill and his scalp crawling uneasily, stared backwards with him. Chapter 5. Tell on, my love, Finian murmured. I was alone, said Tuan. I was so alone that my own shadow frightened me. I was so alone that the sound of a bird in flight or the creaking of a dew-drenched bough whipped me to cover as a rabbit is scared to his burrow. The creatures of the forest scented me and knew I was alone. They stole with silken pad behind my back and snarled when I faced them. The long, gray wolves with hanging tongues and staring eyes chased me to my cleft rock. There was no creature so weak, but it might hunt me. There was no creature so timid, but it might outface me. And so I lived for 2 tens of years and 2 years, until I knew all that beast surmises and had forgotten all that a man had known. I could pad as gently as any. I could run as tirelessly. I could be invisible and patient as a wild cat crouching among leaves. I could smell danger in my sleep and leap at it with wakeful claws. I could bark and growl and clash with my teeth and tear with them. Tell on, my beloved, said Finian. You shall rest in God, dear heart. At the end of that time, said Tuan, Nemed, son of Agnorman, came to Ireland with a fleet of 34 barks, and in each bark there were 30 couple of people. I have heard it, said Finian. My heart leaped for joy when I saw the great fleet rounding the land, and I followed them along scarped cliffs, leaping from rock to rock like a wild goat, while the ships tacked and swung, seeking a harbor. There I stooped to drink at a pool, and saw myself in the chill water. Stopped for a sudden second. Apparently it's buffering. I saw that I was hairy and tufty, and bristled as a savage boar, that I was lean as a striped bush, that I was grayer than a badger, withered and wrinkled like an empty sack, naked as a fish, wretched as a starving crow in winter, and on my fingers and toes there were great curving claws, so that I looked like nothing that was known, like nothing that was animal or divine. And I sat by the pool weeping my loneliness and wildness and my stern old age, and I could do more than cry and lament between the earth and sky, while the beasts that tracked me listened from behind the trees or crouched among bushes to stare at me from their drowsy covert. A storm arose, and when I looked again from my tall cliff, I don't know why music stopped. Let's reload that page. Minor intermission, chat. Stupid background music. Not wanting me. Naked as a fish? Yes. For fish don't wear clothes. Come on now, Internet. Stop being slow and stupid. It is? What the hell is this? Crap. That's very odd. Chat, I can't hear this. I don't know what's going on. Ugh. Interesting choice for music. I didn't pick this. I don't know why it's being played. I don't know what's going on. I'm not seeing anything showing up on this. I turned off the desktop audio specifically for this. This is exceedingly odd, chat. I don't know what's going on. Hopefully people can still hear me amidst this insanity. Maybe I'd like try to go to commercial or something like that. Stupid YouTube. This is actively insane. Yeah, the internet's still going, but I don't know what the hell is going on. What in the fresh hell is this? My audio's not coming through? That's really weird. Chad, we're going to restart this. If you can hear me, I will be right back. Did that fix anything? Okay. God, that's weird. That is really weird, chat. I apologize for that. That was very odd. YouTube apparently had a stroke. God, I go from Irish music to like background music to some weird ass commercial. It's very insane. Oh well. Anyway, wish you all happy St. Patrick's Day as I try and get the background music back up and playing. Because my internet is being stupid slow right now. I have no idea why. It's apparently taking too long to respond. Well, that's wonderful. Let's just stick with the sound of the campfire. For now. And I'm going to have another drink. By the way, I am drinking whiskey while I have to finish off this bottle. There's maybe about like this drink and one other left. So, you know, I'm not drinking an entire bottle or, you know, going overboard with this. But I do have the tags on for Twitch, so I'm set for alcohol use. Why, internet, are you being slow? What is wrong with you? Okay, just gonna bring up Chrome then, because apparently Brave is being stupid. Come on, YouTube. Chat, we might have to go through this without any background music. I know it's terrible, and you all are totally disappointed. Okay, let's see now. History, pull that back up. Chrome is being slow as hell. Internet, why are you being slow and stupid? I have plenty of internet available. I have all the tubes. All the series of tubes. Tubes! Listen, the internet is not something you just dump stuff on. It's not a big truck. It's a series of tubes. That was from an actual U.S. senator, I believe. Senator or congressman, one of the two. I don't remember who exactly said that. Everything is loading. Slow as hell. God knows why. Joy. Joy and rapture. Ted Stevens? What's Ted Stevens? Oh, Ted Stevens was the one who said that. Okay. All right. Connect to the internet. You're offline. Check your connection. That's a lie. I'm connected. Why are you lying to me, internet? That's one of these things where it's a lie, a damn lie, and not a truth. I'm reconnecting. Okay, now that's weird. I had to reconnect to the internet, yet I'm still streaming. Internet, you're drunk. Go home. Give me your keys. You're drunk. I'm not yet. I mean, I eventually need to be. You know, actually, there's more traffic collisions on St. Patrick's Day than any other day. I wonder why. Of course, this also is a Monday, so I mean, shouldn't be too many people out and about doing illicit things with driving. This is very odd. Connect to the internet. I'm connected to the internet. Stop lying to me. No. Aren't there other girls here? No. Oh well. To hell with it. I am going to just continue. Oofda. A storm arose, and when I looked again from my tall cliff, I saw that great fleet rolling as in a giant's hand. At times they were pitched against the sky and staggered aloft, spinning gustily there like wind-blown leaves. Then they were hurled from these dizzy tops to the flat, moaning gulf, to the glassy, inky horror that swirled and whirled between 10 waves. At times a wave leaped howling under a ship, and with a buffet dashed it into the air, and chased it upwards with the thunder stroke on stroke, and followed again close as a chasing wolf, trying with hammering on hammering to beat the wide-wombed bottom, and struck out the frightened lives, though through one black gape. A wave fell on a ship and sunk it down with a thrust, stern as though the whole sky had tumbled at it, and the bark did not cease to go down until it crashed and sank in the sand at the bottom of the sea. The night came, and with it 1,000 darknesses fell from the screeching sky. Not a round-eyed creature of the night might pierce an inch of that multiplied gloom. Not a creature dared creep or stand, for a great wind stroked the world, lashing its league-long whips and cracks of thunder, and singing to itself now in a world-wide yell, now in an ear-dizzying hum and buzz, or with a long snarl and whine it hovered over the world, searching for life to destroy. At times from the moaning and yelping blackness of the sea there came a sound, thin-drawn, as from millions of miles away, distinct as though uttered in the ear like a whisper of confidence, and I knew that a drowning man was calling on his God as he thrashed and was battered into silence, and that a blue-lipped woman was calling on her man as her hair whipped round her brows, and she whirled about like a top. Around me the trees were dragged from earth with dying groans. They leaped into the air and flew like birds. Great waves whizzed from the sea, spinning across the cliffs and hurtling to the earth in monstrous clots of foam. The very rocks came tumbling and sliding and grinding among the trees, and in that rage and in the horror of blackness I fell asleep, or I was beaten into slumber. Chapter 6. There I dreamed, and I saw myself changing into a stag in dream, and I felt in my dream the beating of a new heart within me, and in dream I arched my neck and braced my powerful limbs. I awoke from the dream, and I was that which had dreamed. I stood a while stamping upon a rock, with my bristling head swung high, breathing through wide nostrils all the savor of the world. For I had come marvelously from decrepitude to strength. I had writhed from the bonds of age and was young again. I smelled the turf and knew for the first time how sweet that smelled. And like lightning, my moving nose sniffed all things to my heart and separated them into knowledge. Long I stood there, ringing my iron hoof on stone, and learning all things through my nose. Each breeze that came from the right hand or the left brought me a tale. A wind carried me the tang of wolf, and against that smell I stared and stamped, and on a wind there came the scent of my own kind, and at that I belled. Oh, loud and clear and sweet was the voice of the great stag. With what ease my lovely note went lilting. With what joy I heard the answering call. With what delight I bounded, light as a bird's plume, powerful as a storm, untiring as the sea. Here now was ease in 10-yard springings, with the swinging head, with the rise and fall of a shallow swallow, with the curve and flow and urge of an otter of the sea. What a tingle dwelt about my heart, what a thrill spun into the lofty points of my antlers. How the world was new, how the sun was new, how the wind caressed me. With unswerving forehead and steady eye, I met all that came. The old lone wolf leaped sideways, snarling, and slunk away. The lumbering bear swung his head of hesitations and thought again. He trotted his small red eye away with him to a nearby brake. The stags of my race fled from my rocky forehead, or pushed back and back until their legs broke under them and I trampled them to death. I was the beloved, the well-known, the leader of the herd of Ireland. And at times I came back from my boundings about Eire. From the strings of my heart were drawn to Ulster, and, standing away, my wide nose took the air, while I knew with joy, with terror, that men were blown on the wind. A proud head hung to the turf then, and the tears of memory rolled from a large, bright eye. At times I drew near, delicately, standing among thick leaves or crouched in long-grown grasses, and I stared and mourned as I looked on men. For Nemed and 4 couples had been saved from that fierce storm, and I saw them increase and multiply until 4,000 couples lived and laughed and were riotous in the sun. For the people of Nemed had small minds but great activity. They were savage fighters and hunters. But one time I came, drawn by that intolerable anguish of memory, and all of these people were gone. The place that knew them was silent. In the land they had moved there was nothing of them but their bones that glinted in the sun. Old age came on me there. Among these bones weariness crept into my limbs. My head grew heavy, my eyes dim, my knees jerked and trembled, and there the wolves dared chase me. I went again into the cave that had been my home when I was an old man. One day I stole from the cave to snatch a mouthful of grass, for I was closely besieged by wolves. They made their rush, and I barely escaped from them. They sat beyond the cave staring at me. I knew their tongue. I knew all they said to each other, and all they said to me. But here was yet a thud left my forehead, a deadly trample in my hoof, but they did not dare come into the cave. Tomorrow, they said, we will tear out your throat and gnaw on your living haunch. Chapter 7. Then my soul rose to the height of doom, and I intended all that might happen to me, and agreed to it. Tomorrow, I said, I will go out among ye, and I will die. And at that the wolves howled joyfully, hungrily, impatiently. I slept, and saw myself changing into a boar in dream, and I felt in dream the beating of a new heart within me, and in dream I stretched my powerful neck and braced my eager limbs. I awoke from my dream, and I was that which I had dreamed. The night wore away, the darkness lifted, the day came, and from without the cave the wolves called to me. Come out, O skinny stag, come out and die. And I, with a joyful heart, thrust a black bristle through the hole of the cave, and when they saw that wriggling snout, those curving tusks, that red fierce eye, the wolves fled yelping, tumbling over each other, frantic with terror, and I behind them, a wild cat for leaping, a giant for strength, a devil for ferocity, a madness and gladness of lusty, unsparing life, a killer, a champion, a boar who could not be defied. I took the lordship of the boards of Ireland. Wherever I looked among my tribes, I saw love and obedience. Wherever I appeared among the strangers, they fled away, and the wolves feared me then. And the great grim bear went bounding on heavy paws. I charged him at the head of my troop and rolled him over and over. But it is not easy to kill the bear. So deeply is his life packed under that stinking pelt. He picked himself up and ran, and was knocked down and ran again blindly, butting into trees and stones. Not a claw did the big bear flash, not a tooth did he show, as he ran whimpering like a baby, or as he stood with my nose rammed against his mouth, snarling up to into his nostrils. I challenged all that moved, all creatures but one, for men had again come to Ireland. Semyon, the son of Satra, with his people, from whom the men of Donman and the Firbolg and the Galuian are descended. These I did not chase, and when they chased me, I fled. Often I would go drawn by my memoried heart to look at them as they moved among their fields, and I spoke to my mind in bitterness. When the people of Partholon were gathered in council, my voice was heard. It was sweet to all who heard it, and the words I spoke were wise. The eyes of women brightened and softened when they looked at me. They loved to hear him when he sang, who now wanders in the forest with a tusky herd. Chapter 8. Old age again overtook me. Weariness stole into my limbs, and anguish dozed into my mind. I went to my Ulster cave and dreamed my dream, and I changed into a hawk. I left the ground. The sweet air was my kingdom, and my bright eye stared on 100 miles. I soared, I swooped, I hung, motionless as a living stone over the abyss. I lived in joy and slept in peace, and had my fill of the sweetness of life. During that time, Beothach, the son of Irabonel, the prophet, came to Ireland with his people, and there was a great battle between his men and the children of Semyon. Long I hung over that combat, seeing every spear that hurtled, every stone that whizzed from a sling, every sword that flashed up and down, and the endless glittering of the shields. and at the end I saw that the victory was with Irabonel, and from his people the Tuatha Dé Dé and the Ande came. Although their origin is forgotten, and learned people, because of their excellent wisdom and intelligence, say they came from heaven. These are the people of Faerie. All these are the gods. For long, long years I was a hawk. I knew every hill and stream, every field and glen of Ireland. I knew the shape of cliffs and coasts, and how all places looked under the sun or moon, and I was still a hawk. And when the sons of Mill drove Tuatha Dé Danann underground, and held Ireland against arms or wizardry, and this was the coming of men and the beginning of genealogies. Then I grew old, and in my Ulster cave close to the sea I dreamed my dream, and in it I became a salmon. The green tides of ocean rose over me in my dream, so that I droned in the sea and did not die, for I awoke in deep waters, and I was that which I dreamed. I had been a man, a stag, a boar, a bird, and now I was a fish. In all my changes I had joy and fullness of life, but in the water joy lay deeper, life pulsed deeper. For on land or air there is always something excessive hindering, as arms that swing at the sides of a man, and which the mind must remember. The stag has legs to be tucked away for sleep and untucked for movement, and the bird has wings that must be folded and pecked and cared for. But the fish has but one piece from its nose to its tail. He is complete, single, and unencumbered. He turns in one turn, and goes up and down and round in one sole movement. How I flew through the soft element, how I enjoyed in the country where there is no harshness, in the element which upholds and gives way, which caresses and lets go, and will not let you fall. For man, many stumble in a furrow, the stag tumble from a cliff, the hawk, wing weary and beaten, with darkness around him, and the storm behind, may dash his brains against a tree, but the home of the salmon is his delight, and the sea guards all her creatures. One moment, chat. Before I continue with chapter 9, I am going to go and utilize the restroom real quick. I will be right back. Okay, I am back. To continue on, chapter 9. I became the king of the salmon, and with my multitudes I ranged on the tides of the world. Green and purple distances were under me, green and gold the sunlit regions above. In these latitudes I moved through the world of amber, myself amber and gold, in those others in a sparkle of lucent blue. I curved, lit like a living jewel, and in these again, through dusks of ebony all mazed with silver, I shot and shone, the wonder of the sea. I saw the monstrous of the uttermost ocean go heaving by, and the long, lithe brutes that are toothed to their tails, and below, where gloom dipped down on gloom, vast, livid tangles that coiled and uncoiled, and lapsed down steeps and hells of the sea, where even the salmon could not go. I knew the sea. I knew the secret caves where ocean roars to ocean, the floods that are icy cold, from which the nose of a salmon leaps back as a sting, and the warm streams in which we rocked and dozed and were carried forward without motion. I swam on the outermost rim of the great world, where nothing was but the sea and the sky and the salmon, where even the wind was silent and the water was clear as clean grey rock. And then, far away in the sea, I remembered Ulster, and there came on me an instant, uncontrollable anguish to be there. I turned, and through days and nights I swam tirelessly, jubilantly, with terror waking in me too, and a whisper through my being that I must reach Ireland or die. I fought my way to Ulster from the sea. Ah, how that end of the journey was hard. A sickness was racking in every one of my bones, a languor and weariness creeping through my every fibre and muscle. The waves held me back and held me back. The soft waters seemed to have grown hard, and it was as though I were urging through a rock as I strained toward Ulster from the sea. So tired I was, I could have loosened my frame and been swept away. I could have slept and been drifted and wafted away, swinging on grey-green billows that had turned from the land and were heaving and mounting and surging to the far blue water. Only the unconquerable heart of the salmon could brave that end of toil. The sound of the rivers of Ireland racing down to the sea came to me in the last numb effort. The love of Ireland bore me up. The gods of the rivers trod to me in the white curled breakers, so that I left the sea at long, long last, and I lay in sweet water in the curve of a crannied rock, exhausted, 3 parts dead, triumphant. Chapter 10. Delight and strength came to me again, and now I explored all the inland ways to the great lakes of Ireland and her swift brown rivers. What a joy to lie under an inch of water, basking in the sun, or beneath a shady ledge to watch the small creatures that speed like lightning on the rippling top. I saw the dragonflies flash and dart and turn with a poise, with a speed that no other winged thing knows. I saw the hawk hover and stare and swoop. He fell like a falling stone, but he could not catch the king of the salmon. I saw the cold-eyed cat stretching along above level with the water, eager to hook and lift the creatures of the river. I saw men. They saw me also. They came to know me and look for me. They lay in wait at the waterfalls up which I leaped. They held out nets for me. They hid traps under leaves. They made cords of the color of water, of the color of weeds. But this salmon had a nose that knew how a weed felt and how a string. They drifted meat on a sightless string, but I knew of the hook. They thrust spears at me and threw lances which they drew back again with a cord. Many a wound I got from men, many a sorrowful scar. Every beast pursued me in the waters and along the banks. The barking, black-skinned otter came after me in lust and gust and swirl. The wild cat fished for me. The hawk and the steep-winged, spear-beaked birds dived down on me, and men crept on me with nets the width of the river, so that I got no rest. My life became a ceaseless scurry, and wound and escape, a burden and anguish of watchfulness, and then I was caught. Chapter 11. The fisherman of Cariel, the king of Ulster, took me in his net. Ah, that was a happy man when he saw me. He shouted for joy when he saw the great salmon in his net. I was still in the water as he hauled delicately. I was still in the water as he pulled me to the bank. My nose touched air and spun from it as from fire. I dived with all my might against the bottom of the net, holding yet to the water, loving it, mad with terror that I must quit that loveliness. But the net held, and I came up. "Be quiet, king of river," said the fisherman. "Give in to doom," said he. I was in air, and it was as though I was in fire. The air pressed on me like a fiery mountain. It beat on my scales and scorched them. It rushed down my throat and scalded me. It weighed on me and squeezed me, so that my eyes felt as though they must burst from my head as though it would leap from my body, and my body as though it would swell and expand and fly in 1,000 pieces. The light blinded me. The heat tormented me. The dry air made me shrivel and gasp, and as he lay on the grass, the great salmon whirled his desperate nose once more to the river, and leaped, leaped, leaped. Even under the mountain of air, he could leap upwards, but not forwards, and yet he leaped, for in each rise you could see the twinkling waves, the rippling and curling waters. "Be at ease, O king," said the fisherman. "Be at rest, my beloved. Let go the stream. Let the oozy marge be forgotten, and the sandy bed where the shades dance, all in green and gloom, and the brown flood sings along." And as he carried me to the palace, he sang a song of the river, and a song of doom, and a song in praise of the king of the waters. When the king's wife saw me, she desired me. I was put over a fire and roasted, and she ate me. And when time passed, she gave birth to me, and I was her son, and the son of Cariel the king. I remember warmth and darkness, and movement and unseen sounds. All that happened I remember. From the time I was on the gridiron until the time I was born, I forget nothing of these things. "And now," said Finian, "you will be born again, for I shall baptize you into the family of the living God." So far the story of Tuan of Carriel. No man knows if he died in those distant ages when Finian was abbot of Moville, or if he still keeps his fort in Ulster, watching all things and remembering them for the glory of God and the honour of Ireland. This next story is The Dream of Angus. A little bit of dyslexia there. Angus, the wandering Angus, Yeats called him, is the Irish god of love. His proper name is Oengus Mac Inog, and he was the son of the fairy king and the goddess of the river Boyne. He has played a part in many a happy and sad love story. It was Angus who sheltered the passionate runaways, Dermund and Grania, from the wrath of her husband Finn MacCool. They hid away in his home, Buenebon, in what is now called Newgrange, County Meath. It is an acre in size, entirely underground, and fully 17 feet from floor to wood beam ceiling. Visitors, especially lovers, I suppose, are welcome there still. This, Angus's own love story, had great consequences. Because Queen Maeve helped him in his quest, Angus took her side against Cuchulainn and Ulster in the War of the Bull. The Dream of Angus. Angus was fast asleep one night in his bed when he saw a girl coming towards him. He thought she must surely be the most beautiful in all Ireland. But when Angus reached out his hand to bring her to him, she vanished away. He lay in his bed awake until morning, heartsick for the loss of her. He got no rest that day, thinking how she had gone from him without a word spoken between them, and no food passed his lips. That night she appeared to him again. In her hand was a little harp, the sweetest he had ever heard, and she played it and sang him to sleep. He woke at dawn and remembered that he still had not spoken a word to the girl, nor she to him. He would eat nothing again that day, fretting for the night to come. In this way a whole year passed, so that Angus grew pale and thin, and fell into a wasting sickness. But he never told a soul about the girl, so that not one of all the physicians of Ireland could say what was wrong with him. Finally they sent for Fingon, the king's own physician, to attend him. That one would name a man's illness from the look on his face, and could tell from the drift of chimney smoke how many were sick in the house below. Fingon stared down on Angus, then bent and whispered to him, "I think this sickness of yours goes by the name Love in Vain." "You have guessed well," said Angus. "Each night a beautiful girl comes to me, the most beautiful girl in all Ireland. She brings with her a little harp, and she plays." "Enough," said Fingon. "She shall be yours. Send someone now to your mother to come and speak with you." So Boyne, the mother of Angus, came to them, and the physician told her of her son's illness and of its cause. Have all Ireland searched for this girl your son has seen? He advised her, and he left Angus in her care. And for the length of a year she had all Ireland searched, but no trace of the girl could be found. So she sent for Fingrin to come once more. Let his father, the Dagda, come and speak to his son, he instructed her. Then together they summoned the Dagda, king of the fairies, until he himself, the lord of all powers, was obliged to appear before them. Why have I been called here? He asked, in his usual bad temper. To speak to your son and to help him, answered Fingon, most respectfully, for he is lying near death for the love of a girl he saw in a dream, and who cannot be found. What of that? Growled the Dagda. You know as much about such matters as I, wizard. Ah, well, said Fingon sadly, perhaps I do. And here I thought I was addressing the king of all the fairy folk of Ireland. That I am, roared the Dagda. Well then, said the sly physician, it would be a small thing for you to come with us over to Munster. They say that Bov, who is chieftain of the fairies there, can be very helpful in matters such as this. So to Munster they went, all three, and Bov, who was chieftain over the fairy hill there, welcomed them graciously, bowing low before the Dagda, and asking how he might serve him. My son Angus, said the fairy king, has been wasting away these last 2 years for the love of a girl he saw in a dream. I command you seek out this young woman and find her for his sake. It shall be done, said Bov, if it takes me all of a year. And so another 12 months passed, and they went again to Bov's house in the fairy hill of Munster. I have good news for you, the chieftain told them. I went round the whole of Ireland until I found her. The girl is at Loch Beldragon in the Galtee Mountains. Well then, said the Dagda, now let Angus go with you there, and we'll see if this is the same girl he saw in his dreams. Then Angus was brought in a chariot to Bov's house, and made welcome with a feast that lasted 3 days and 3 nights. At the end of that, Bov said to him, Come away with me now, and we'll see whether this is the same girl that came to you in your dream. They journeyed far, across the plains and through high mountains, until they came to the shores of a great lake, and there they saw 3 times 50 young women, and the girl herself was among them, but she was taller and lovelier than them all. There was a silver chain between each 2 of them, but about her own throat was a necklace of silver and a chain of bright beaten gold. Did you see her? Asked Bov. I do, whispered Angus. What is her name? She is Caer, the daughter of Ethal, who is chieftain over the fairy hills of Connacht, answered Bov. I have no power over her. Angus, you cannot take her with you this time. I know that, said Angus, but she is the one who came to me in my dream. Then Angus returned to his home country, and Bov went with him. They told the Dagda and Boyne the news that they had seen the girl that was as beautiful as ever Angus had said, and they told her name and her father's name. Well, grumbled the Dagda, what can we do now? I think, said Bov, that the best thing to do is to go to Connacht and ask for the aid of King Ailill and Queen Maeve, for the girl is of their province. With 60 chariots to escort him, the Dagda set out for Cruachan, the palace of Ailill and Maeve. and there he was made for welcome with a great feast, so that they were eating and drinking for the length of a week. At the end of that, Ailill politely asked the fairy king the purpose of his visit. "My son Angus," said the Dagda, who was becoming impatient with telling the tale, "has fallen in love with a girl of your province, and becomes sick because of it. I have come to ask you to let the lad have her." "We will," said Maeve. "Who is she?" asked Ailill. "The daughter of Ethel," said the Dagda. Maeve and her husband exchanged a long glance until he spoke. "If she were ours to give, she would be given," he said, "but we have no power over her." The Dagda stared hard into his cup of ale, and thought hard about the advice he had received from court physicians and Munster chieftains. "What might we do?" said Maeve. "Is summon her father here to us." "Let it be done," said the Dagda. A steward of Ailill was set to Ethel, the father of Caer, to invite him to the palace, but the man soon returned with his message from that proud fairy. "I will not come to Ailill and Maeve, nor will I give my daughter to the son of the Dagda." Ailill was angry hearing that. "He will come nevertheless," said he, "and the heads of his warriors with him." Then Ailill and the Dagda, together with their warriors, rode out against the fairy hill of Ethel. They took the hill in a terrible fight, and Ethel was brought before them a captive. Ailill commanded him, "Give your daughter now to the son of the Dagda here, who is king over all the fairies of Ireland." And the Dagda smiled. "That is not in my power to do," Ethel answered. And the Dagda stopped smiling. "There is an enchantment upon my daughter," Ethel continued, "which is beyond all my magic." And what manner of enchantment might that be?" asked the Dagda softly, clenching his fist tight as though he were holding his temper inside him. "The spell over her is that she must take the shape of a bird for 1 year, and her own true human form the next," said Ethel. "What form is on her this year?" asked Ailill. Now Caer's father was unwilling to betray her. "I cannot say," he answered. "Your head from you if you cannot say," shouted Maeve. "This much I will tell you," said Ethel then. "All Hallows Eve she will be in the shape of a swan at Loch Beldragon, and 3 times 50 swans with her, for she told me as much herself. Then peace was made between them, the mortal king and queen, and the fairy chieftain, and the Dagda bade farewell to all of them, and returned to his home, where he told his son, "Go you to Loch Beldragon upon All Hallows Eve, and call her to you from the water." When it was down in the autumn, Angus went again to the mountain lake, and there he saw 3 times 50 white birds, linked 2 by 2, with the silver chains around their necks. He stood on the shore in his human form, and called the girl to him. "Come, speak with me, Caer." "Who calls me?" came the answer. "Angus calls you." "I will go to you," she said, "if you swear by your honor that I can come back to the water again." "My word upon it," said he. So she went to him, a tall white swan, with a necklace of silver and a chain of bright beaten gold about her neck. He held her fast in his arms, and took upon himself the shape of a swan, and that is and that his word might not be broken, they went together into the loch, and around it 3 times swimming. Then they spread their wings and rose up over the water, 2 graceful white birds, linked together by a golden chain, and they flew away to his own country. So sweet was the music they made in their flight, that the mortals below who heard it fell smiling to sleep for 3 days and 3 nights, and Caer stayed with Angus forever after. Thus ends the dream of Angus. This next story is Midhir and Etienne. Etain, I think that's how to pronounce it. When the Tuatha De Danann, the Irish call them She, but the rest of the world calls them fairies, came through the air and the high air into Ireland, they tried to live in peace with the native Firbolg people. But because of the love of Midhir for Etienne, the truce was broken, and the Firbolgs were doomed. Once they were giants. Soon they were to be little people. The leprechauns, some say, are scattered and solitary remnants of that tribe. But when the story of Midhir and Etienne begins, the She and their king, the Dagda, are sharing the land with the Firbolg and their king, Eochaid. The tale of Midhir and Etienne has been told and retold. Fiona MacLeod made a play of it called The Immortal Hour, and Michael McLemore modernized it in The Stars Are Waking. This version, slightly edited, is taken from Lady Augusta Gregory's wonderful book, Gods and Fighting Men. Midhir and Etienne. After a while, Midhir took Etienne to be his wife, and there was a great jealousy on Fuamach, the wife he had before. When she saw the love that Midhir gave Etienne, and she called to the druid to help her, and he put spells on Etienne so that Fuamach was able to drive her away. And when she was driven out, Angus Og, son of the Dagda, took her into his keeping, and when Midhir asked her back, he would not give her up, but he brought her about with him to every place he went. And wherever they rested, he made a sunny house for her, and put sweet-smelling flowers in it. And he made invisible walls about it, that no one could see through, and that could not be seen. But when news came to Fuama that Etienne was so well cared for by Angus, anger and jealousy came on her again, and she searched her mind for a way to destroy Etienne altogether. And it is what she did. She persuaded Midhir and Angus to go out and meet one another, and to make peace. For there had been a quarrel between them ever since the time Etienne was set away, and when Angus was away, Fuamach went and found Etienne there in her sunny house, and she turned her with druid spells into a fly, and then she sent a blast of wind into the house that swept her away through the window. But as to Midhir and Angus, they waited a while for Fuamach to come and join them, and when she did not come, they were uneasy in their minds, and Angus hurried back. When he found the sunny house empty, he went in search of Fuamach, and it was along with the druid he found her, and he struck her head off there and then. And for 7 years Etienne was blown to and fro through Ireland in great misery. And at last she came to the house of Etar, of Inver Shechmain, where there was a feast going on, and she fell from a beam of the roof into a golden cup that was beside Etar's wife, and Etar's wife drank her down with the wine, and at the end of 9 months she was born again as Etar's daughter. And she had the same name as before, Etienne, and she was reared as a king's daughter, and there were 50 young girls, daughters of princes, brought up with her to keep her company. And it happened one day Etienne and all the rest of the young girls were out bathing in the bay at Inver Kechmain, and saw from the water a man with very high looks coming towards them over the plain, and he riding a bay horse with mane and tail curled. A long green cloak he had on him, and a shirt woven with threads of red gold, and a brooch of gold that reached across his shoulders on each side. And he had on his back a shield of silver with a rim of gold and a boss of gold, and in his hand a sharp-pointed spear covered with rings of gold from heel to socket. Fair yellow hair he had coming over his forehead, and it bound with a golden band to keep it from loosening. And when he came near them, he got down from his horse and sat down on the bank, and this is what he said. It is here Etienne is today, at the Mount of Fair Women. It is among little children is her life on the strand of Inver Kechmain. Many great battles will happen for your sake to Eochaid of Medhi. Destruction will fall upon the Sidhe, and war on thousands of men. And when he had said that, he vanished, and no one knew where he went. And they did not know the man that had come to them was Midhir. And when Etienne was grown to be a beautiful young woman, she was seen by Eochaid Fedrich, High King of Ireland, and this is the way that happened. He was going one time over the fair green of Breilech, and saw at the side of a well a woman with a bright comb of gold and silver, and she washing in a silver basin, having 4 golden birds on it, and little bright purple stones set on the rim of the basin. A beautiful purple cloak she had, and silver fringes to it, and a gold brooch that she had on her dress of green silk with a long hood, embroidered in red gold, and wonderful clasps of gold and silver on her breasts and on her shoulder. The sunlight was falling on her, so that the gold and the green silk were shining out. 2 plaits of her hair she had, 4 locks in each plait. Pleat? 2 plaits of hair. She had 4 locks in each pleat, and a bead on the point of every lock. And the color of her hair was like yellow flags in summer, or like red gold after it's rubbed. There she was, letting down her hair to wash it, and her arms out through the sleeve holes of her shift. Her soft hands were as white as the snow of a single night, and her eyes as blue as any blue flower, and her lips as red as the berries of the rowan tree, and her body as white as the foam of a wave. The bright light of the moon was in her face, the highness of pride in her eyebrows, a dimple of delight in each of her cheeks, the light of wooing in her eyes. And when she walked, she had a step that was steady and even like the walk of a queen. And Eochaid sent his people to bring her to him, and he asked her name, and she told them her name was Etienne, the daughter of Etar, king of the riders of the Sidhe. And Eochaid gave her his love, and he paid the bride price and brought her home to Tara as his wife, and there was a great welcome before her there. It was a good while after that there was a great fair held at Tara, and Etienne was out on the green looking at the games and the races, and she saw a rider coming towards her, but no one could see him but herself. And when he came near, she saw he had the same appearance as they were out in sea at Inverkechmen. And when he came up to her, he began to sing words to her that no one could hear but herself. And this is what he said. "O beautiful woman, will you come with me to the wonderful country that is mine? It is pleasant to be looking at the people there. Beautiful people without any blemish. Their hair is the color of the flag flower. Their fair body is as white as snow. The color of the fox glove is on every cheek. The young never grow old there. The fields and the flowers are as pleasant to be looking at as the blackbird's eggs, warm. Sweet streams of mead and of wine flow through that country. There is no care and no sorrow on any person. We see others, but we ourselves are not seen. Though the plains of Ireland are beautiful, it is little you would think of them after our great plain. Though the ale of Ireland is heady, the ale of the great country is still more heady. O beautiful woman, if you come to my proud people, it is the flesh of pigs newly killed I will give you for food. It is ale and new milk I will give you for drink. It is feasting you will have with me there. It is a crown of gold you will have upon your hair, O beautiful woman. And will you come there with me, Etienne? He said. But Etienne said she would not leave Eochaid, the High King. Will you come if Eochaid gives you leave? Midhir said then. I will do that, said Etienne. One day after that time, Eochaid the High King was looking out from his place at Tara, and saw a strange man coming across the plain. Yellow hair he had, and eyes blue and shining, like the flame of a candle, and purple dress on him, and in his hand a 5-pronged spear, and a shield having gold knobs on it. He came up to the king, and the king bade him welcome. Who are you yourself? The king said, and what are you come for you are stranger to me. If I am stranger to you, you are no stranger to me, for I have known you this long time, said the strange man. What is your name? Said the king. It is nothing very great, said he. I am called Midhir. What brings you here? Said Eochaid. I am come to play a game of chess with you, said the stranger. Are you a good player? Said the king. A trial will tell you that, said Midhir. The chessboard is in the queen's house, and she is in her sleep at this time, said Eochaid. That is not matter, said Midhir, for I have with me a chessboard, and it is made of silver, and precious stones shining in every corner of it. And then he brought out the chessmen, and they made of gold, from a bag that was of shining gold threads. Let us play now, said Midhir. I will not play without a stake, said the king. What stake shall we play for? Said Midhir. We can settle that after the game is over, said the king. They played together then, and Midhir was beaten, and this is what the king asked of him. 50 brown horses to be given to him. And then they played the second time, and Midhir was beaten again, and this time the king gave him 4 hard things to do: to make a road over Morn la Merid, and to clear Midhir of stones, and to cover the district of Tethra with rushes, and the district of Darbech with trees. So Midhir brought his people to do those things, and it is hard work they had doing them. And Eochaid used to be out watching them, as he took notice that what the men of the Sidhe yoked their oxen, it was by the neck and the shoulder they used to yoke them, and not by the forehead and the head. And it was after Eochaid they taught his people to yoke them that way. He was given the name Eochaid Erim, that is, of the plough. So Erim is Gaelic for of the plough. And when all was done, Midhir came to Eochaid again, looking thin and wasted enough with the dint of the hard work he had been doing. And he asked Eochaid to play the third game with him. Eochaid agreed, and it was settled as before, the stake to be settled by the winner. It was Midhir won the game that time, and when the king asked him what he wanted, "It is Etienne, your wife, I want," said he. "I will not give her to you," said the king. "All I will ask then," said Midhir, "is to put my arms about her and to kiss her once." "You may do that," said the king, "if you will wait to the end of a month." So Midhir agreed to that and went away for that time. At the end of the month he came back again and stood in the great hall at Tara, and no one had ever seen him look so calmly as he did that night. And Eochaid had all his best fighting men gathered in the hall, and he shut all the doors of the palace when he saw Midhir come in, for in fear he would try to bring away Etienne by force. "I am come to be paid what is due to me," said Midhir. "I have not been thinking of it up to this time," said Eochaid, and there was anger on him. "You promised me Etienne your wife," said Midhir. The redness of shame came on Etienne when she heard that. But Midhir said, "Let there be no shame on you, Etienne, for it is through the length of the year I have been asking your love, and have offered you every sort of treasure and riches, and you refused to come to me till such a time as your husband would give you to leave." "It is true I said that," said Etienne. "I will go if Eochaid gives me up to you." "I will not give you up," said Eochaid. "I will let him do no more than put his arms about you in this place, as was promised him." "I will do that," said Midhir. With that he took his sword in his left hand, and he took Etienne in his right arm and kissed her. All the armed men in the house made a rush at him then, but he rose up through the roof, bringing Etienne with him. And when they rushed out of the house to follow him, all they could see were two swans high up in the air, linked together by a chain of gold. There was a great anger on Eochaid then, and he went and searched all through Ireland, but there was no tidings of them to be had, for they were in the houses of the Sidhe. It was to the house of Angus on the Boyne they went first, and after that they stopped a while. They went to a hill of the Sidhe in Connacht. Then they went to Leith, and Etienne's daughter Essa came to them there. And she brought 100 of every sort of cattle with her, and Midhir fostered her for 7 years. And all through that time Eochaid, the High King, was making a search for them. But at last Codal of the Withered Breast took 4 rods of yew and wrote augrams on them. And through them and through his enchantments he found out that Etienne was with Midhir in Leith. So Eochaid went there and made an attack on the place, and he was for 9 years besieging it. And Midhir was driving him away. And then his people began digging through the hill, and when they were getting near to where Etienne was, Midhir sent 3 times 20 beautiful women, having all of them the appearance of Etienne, and he bade the king choose her out from among them. And the first he chose was his own daughter Essa. But then Etienne called to him, and he knew, and he brought her home to Tara. But there was great anger on Midhir and his people because of their hill being attacked and dug into. And it was in revenge for that insult they brought Conrad, High King of Ireland, that was grandson of Eochaid and of Etienne, to his death afterwards at Daderga's Inn. Thus ends Midhir and Etienne. This next story is how Cormac MacArt went to Ferry. Cormac, son of Art the lovely, grandson of Con of the 100 Battles, was the greatest of ancient Ireland's high kings. His was a golden reign, and according to the Book of Malibot, the world was replete with all that was good in his time. The food and the fat of the land and the fish of the sea were in abundance. There was neither woundings nor robberies, but everyone enjoyed his own in peace. Cormac had all the attributes of the perfect king. In his youth he was a shepherd. He built the magnificent palace at Tara. He was wise in judgment and generous. He was a lawmaker, a warrior, poet, and after his death in 267 AD, it was natural for his subjects to ascribe his power and glory to fairy influence. After all, wasn't it his own uncle, Conla Redhair, who was carried away by the fairy maiden? Manannán, the fairy king of Cormac, meets in this tale. It is the sea god of the Celts. They say that the flying white foam of the waves of the ocean is the manes of his mighty horses as they gallop and plunge. How Cormac MacArt went to Ferry. One day Cormac saw a youth upon the green, having in his hand a glittering fairy branch with 9 apples of red. And whensoever the branch was shaken, wounded men and women enfeebled by illness would be lulled to sleep by the sound of the very sweet fairy music which those apples uttered. Nor could anyone upon the earth bear in mind any want, woe, or weariness of soul when that branch was shaken for him. "Is that branch thy own?" said Cormac. "It is indeed mine." "Wouldst thou sell it? And what wouldst thou require for it?" "Will you give me what I ask?" said the youth. The king promised, and the youth then claimed his wife, his daughter, and his son. Sorrowful of heart was the king, Heaviness of heart filled his wife and children when they learned that they must part from him. But Cormac shook the branch among them, and when they heard the soft, sweet music of the branch, they forgot all care and sorrow, and went forth to meet the youth. And he and they took their departure, and were seen no more. Loud cries of weeping and mourning were made throughout Erin when this was known. But Cormac shook the branch so that there was no longer any grief or heaviness of heart upon anyone. After a year, Cormac said, "It is a year today since my wife, my son, and my daughter were taken from me. I will follow them by the same path that they took." Cormac went off, and a dark magical mist rose about him, and he chanced to come upon a wonderful, marvelous plain. Many horsemen were there, busy thatching a house with the feathers of foreign birds. When one side was thatched, they would go and seek more, and when they returned, not a feather was on the roof. Cormac gazed at them for a while, and then went forward. Again he saw a youth dragging up trees to make a fire, but before he could find a second tree, the first one would be burnt, and it seemed to Cormac that his labor would never end. Cormac journeyed onwards until he saw 3 immense wells on the border of the plain, and on each well was a head. From out of the mouth of the first head there flowed 2 streams, and into it there flowed one. The second head had a stream flowing out of, and another stream into its mouth, whilst 3 streams were flowing from the mouth of the third head. Great wonder seized Cormac, and he said, "I will stay and gaze upon these wells, for I should find no man to tell me your story." Then he set onwards till he came to a house in the middle of a field. He entered and greeted the inmates. There sat within a tall couple clad in many-hued garments, and they greeted the king and bade him welcome for the night. Then the wife bade her husband seek food, and he arose and returned with a huge wild boar upon his back and a log in his hand. He cast down the swine and the log upon the floor and said, "There is meat, cook it for yourselves." "How can I do that?" said Cormac. "I will teach you," said the man. "Split this great log, make 4 pieces of it, and make 4 quarters of the hog. Put a log under each quarter. Tell a true story, and the meat will be cooked." "Tell the first story yourself," said Cormac. 7 pigs I have of the same kind as one I brought, and I could feed the world with them. For if a pig is killed, I have but to put its bones into the sty again, and it will be found alive the next morning." The story was true, and a quarter of the pig was cooked. Then Cormac begged the woman of the house to tell a story. "I have 7 white cows, and they fill 7 cauldrons with milk every day, and I give my word that they yield as much milk as would satisfy the men of the whole world if they were out on yonder plain drinking it." That story was true, and a second quarter of the pig was cooked. Cormac was bidden now to tell a story for his quarter, and he told how he was upon a search for his wife, his son, and his daughter that had been borne away from him a year before by a youth with a fairy branch. "If what thou says is true," said the man of the house, "thou art indeed Cormac, son of Art, son of Con of the 100 Battles." "Truly I am," quoth Cormac. That story was true, and a third quarter of the pig was cooked. "Eat thy meal now," said the man of the house. "I never ate before," said Cormac, having only 2 people in my company. Wouldst thou eat it with 3 others? If they were dear to me, I would, said Cormac. Then the door opened, and there entered the wife and children of Cormac. Great was his joy and his exultation. Then Manan MacLir, lord of the fairy cavalcade, appeared before him in his own true form, and said thus, I it was, Cormac, who bore away these 3 from thee. I it was who gave thee this branch, and all that I might bring thee here. Eat now, and drink. I would do so, said Cormac. I could learn the meaning of the wonders I saw today. Thou shalt learn them, said Manannán. The horsemen thatching the roof with feathers are the likeness of people who go forth into the world to seek riches and fortune. When they return, their houses are bare, and so they go on forever. The young men dragging up the trees to make a fire is a likeness of those who labor for others. Much trouble they have, but they never warm themselves at the fire. The 3 heads in the wells are the 3 kinds of men. Some there are who give freely when they get freely. Some who give freely though they get little. Some who get much and give little, and they are the worst of the 3, Cormac, said Manannán. After that, Cormac and his wife and his children sat down, and a tablecloth was spread before them. That is a very precious thing before thee, said Manannán. There is no food, however delicate, that shall be asked of it, but it shall be had without doubt. That is well, quoth Cormac. After that, Manannán thrust his hand into his girdle and brought out a goblet, and set it upon his palm. This cup has this virtue, said he, that when a false story is told before it, it makes 4 pieces of it, and when a true story is related, it is made whole again. Those are very precious things you have, Manannán, said the king. They shall all be thine, said Manannán, the goblet, the branch, and the tablecloth. Then they ate their meal, and that meal was good, for they could not think of any meat, but they got it upon the tablecloth, nor of any drink, but they got it in the cup. Great thanks did they give to Manannán. When they had eaten their meal, a couch was prepared for them, and they lay down to slumber and sweet sleep. When they rose on the morrow morn, was in Tara of the kings, and by their side were tablecloth, cup, and branch. Thus did Cormac fare at the court of Manannán,